Hi, my name is Moshe Kindler, and I'm the publisher of The Jewish Link,
Hi, this is Elizabeth Kratz. I'm editor of The Jewish Link.
and you're on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. Welcome to another edition of the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. I am really happy to have with us a very special guest, someone who has become a friend over the years. Actually, I think I'm really one of the few people who could say this. I have here Rabbi Judah Mischel, who has many titles. Rabbi Judah Mischel is personally meaningful to myself and my family. I am some of you know that I have a son with special needs. What that also means is I am a proud HASC parent. And really enjoyed HASC Visiting Day a few weeks ago. This is being shot in the summer, which is why we look a little more casual and maybe even a little more suntanned. Even though I can't get suntan. So Rabbi Judah Mischel is here, and just someone who I really, I'll tell you something. It's interesting. We've known each other for years, and I think I told you this, and I'm going to say it again. But Rabbi Judah is also a columnist for us for I think now at least 2+ years, through 2 to 3 years. But you kind of wormed your way into my heart in a different way. Not because of your involvement in HASC, but really as an author, as a machaber. Your Sefer Baderech is probably one of the best things I've read in English over the last 3 to 5 years. I don't mean to shower you with praise, and actually the thing is, I think that's actually what people don't know as much about you. And also, since we're here for the Jewish Link, since we're kind of literary here, so I actually want to hear a little bit about your experience writing and how you got to writing. And actually, I was going to say the truth is I was actually shocked by Baderech because I didn't think that you were that good a writer, before. And for some reason, I didn't.
You saw me with T-shirt cannon on visiting day, and you're like, "This guy can write."
Something. I just didn't know. Judah. I just didn't know, and I'm kind of like I've never really started off with charata, with regret, but I kind of like reading it, and also reading your column has kind of just changed my view on Rabbi Judah Mischel. And the truth is, maybe we'll frame it this whole interaction a little bit, this whole interview with how Rabbi Judah Mischel became not just Rabbi Judah Mischel of executive director of HASC, but also Rabbi Judah Mischel, the scholar and author and writer of the Jewish Link. So what we like to do is I like to give a little bit of context. I know you grew up in the area. I know you went to Frisch, but tell us about young Judah Mischel. I'm trying to think where we are age-wise. I think you're a little younger than me, but I'm not sure. But I don't think we ever interacted
45.
really. So yeah, I don't remember. I know we have a lot of friends in common, but I'll shut up a little bit.
It's great.
So tell us the Rabbi Judah Mischel, a little bit the background, the history, and obviously, by the way, feel free to make jokes and stories and anecdotes are all good.
First of all, thank you. It's so nice to be here. And we're a friendship in development, which is really the best way. Sometimes you have friendships that you went to elementary school together, or sometimes you played ball together in high school, or but it's nice at a certain point in life when you meet somebody of depth and quality that you get to know along the way, and friends by choice is kind of a nice thing. And we have a lot of people in common, like you said.
Rabbi Mischel works with my sister. My sister Razel is the longtime women's head counselor of HASC, which I think is actually how I kind of got to know you.
And so much more.
And so much more.
So much more than that.
And meaning I'm saying we owe you a lot of Akar Sato for kind of taking care of my son Zev. So, but many others.
They're a wonderful group of people that I have the chus to work with. That's for sure. Okay, thank you for having me. Young Judah Mischel, we're going to get into I saw the suit ladies opening up next door. Are we going to get into the awkward pre-bar mitzvah husky suit years, because those are traumatic for me?
I don't need all the awkward years, but I love the chutzpahdik years you said. We were talking about off camera.
Okay.
And I haven't liked that line that you have better midos today, but
I'm more aware and I think trying to be more appropriate and trying to be more respectful. You get older. I mean,
trying but not always succeeding.
No, not always succeeding. That's for sure. Not always succeeding. I guess just the awareness of recognizing that Hashem doesn't intend for us to change our essence, to change our primary way of being, just to kind of adapted that it should be developmentally appropriate. Shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with being a 45-year-old who makes averos, meaning we all do, who makes mistakes and speaks out of turn. We all do. It's just if you're speaking like a 16-year-old when you're in your 40s, that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. When you're acting like a 30-year-old when you're in your 40s, not appropriate either. So I kind of hope that we can make age-appropriate disrespect and age-appropriate mistakes.
I hear that.
Okay, so you wanted Judah Mischel, that's me, as a young man, the early years.
You grew up in our Jewish Link readership. I know that. I know. Am I right about that, or sort of? No, you grew up in where'd you live?
Everybody reads the link. Everybody's reading the link.
Yeah.
I mean, you're asking if I didn't grow up in New Square. If that's what you're asking. New Square, it's probably not huge in New Square yet.
No, but I have it's interesting you say that because we have a lot of advertisers from the Hasidic community. So a lot of the big businesses are
one big ecosystem.
Correct.
Well, just different cultural nuances.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Monsey. My parents made the decision to move to Monsey when early in their marriage because they had moved into the world of being Shomer Shabbos and looking for a community that would, have a shul and type of a place where there'd be support and there'd be other young families who are, Torah observant. And they chose Monsey because my mother's family lived in Spring Valley. Now the whole area is, but all those areas, Suffern, Pomona, Haverstraw, Airmont, that Jews didn't live in, certainly not Jews who were identifiably, Orthodox. So that's where I grew up, So I grew up in Monsey, and parents, I think they made the real decisions, the real tough decisions for the family when they chose that path. It was interesting growing up in Monsey, being a more culturally modern Orthodox, Tzioni family.
But they were modern Orthodox then.
It's true. It definitely were. Our neighborhood where my parents bought a house, I guess where they could afford to buy a house, was really Hasidish. Like we grew up with Hasidim around.
So you grew up down the hill is what you're telling me?
Yeah, we grew up on Grove Street, right near the fire station, right where the famous story with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky took place with the nuns. Our backyard, like if we hit a ground rule double, it was into the convent area, the forest behind the convent, and it was before Hatzalah there. It was like when you're talking 40 years ago, Monsey, and there was a very diverse group of people. But our specific area, we didn't have Shabbos friends. Our friends lived a mile away. Like the kids who went to Ashar lived a mile away. So we kind of, grew up in between with a lot of different influences and seeing a lot of things with parents who were, my mother specifically, my dad ever hears this, he knows what I'm talking about. My mother specifically, who was very open and embracing of all different types of people. And that was kind of like the context for where things went. Ashar was a very major influence in our lives growing up as an institution. We davened there and we went to school there. Mm-hmm. My parents invested their time and resources and life there. My dad was on the board for many, many years. My mother was a teacher there. All of us went to school there. The principal was our rabbi.
So Rabbi Mischel was a big influence.
Mischel, blessed memory.
By the way, not the same Mischel.
Who I used to tell people we were related, depending, like if it would help me climb the social ladder.
For our readers, listeners, they spell their names with Mischel with a U and
one with a Vav, one with a Yud. Mm-hmm. But the Mischel brothers were a very big part of our journey. Very, very important part of our life. And Rabbi and Sarah Mischel were big. We were in their sukkah. We were in their home. We'd pass by their home every Shabbos walking to and from. We walked a mile plus to daven and Ashar every Shabbos. And Mischel, as an educator, as a pedagogue, as just a warm, loving, caring figure, really played an important role in our life and in our development. And I owe a lot to Rabbi Mischel, Rabbi Levy, Rabbi Irving Levy, who has family in Enikelach around the Teaneck area. They were instrumental in our parents' and my family's growth, helping them get from like an initial burst of chachma, literally in college with Chabad, to where we all are, on the way to today. So a lot of hakar satov to that. A lot.
Okay, so take us through. So Ashar, let's frisch. Let's get through the education.
The Monsey bus to frisch. I mean, the Monsey bus to frisch. In those days, it wasn't like the pipeline.
That is good MTA. The MTA was too.
My parents believed in co-education and religious Zionist and modern Orthodox education, and MTA was not that.
Correct.
MTA was like yeshiva, and so was Shari Torah. And a lot of my friends who I played ball with and hung out with, a lot of my friends went to those places. And I on a certain level, wanted to go there just because I wanted to go with, I had a couple of very close friends who were in Frisch, family friends. And my parents are, people who believe deeply in education. They never had the privilege of a formal Jewish education. So they didn't learn in yeshiva or seminary or anything like that. My mother, I think, learned the Alpha Beis in college, the Chabad Shlucha in Buffalo. My father had a more traditional upbringing, more conservative. I mean, with Jewish symbols and Jewish language. They believed very, very much in the model of Frisch and coeducation and everything that came along with that. We went to Ramah as when we were kids.
Ramah Nayak.
Ramah Nayak, again, values-oriented, meaning-oriented. They weren't into this whole thing of just like sports and food and learning as like as an outlet. My dad started Project Leap in Ashar, which was like, Sunday education to like supplement. And we did all sorts of different, we were always involved in the science fair and extracurricular activities and sports and swim club and all these things like that. My parents felt very, very much that, choosing a life of orthodoxy, of Torah mitzvahs, shouldn't come at the expense of exposure to the world and involvement in the world. And invested a lot, or Moser Nefesh, a lot for us to have that. And the going from Monsey to Frisch was certainly part of that. Tuition is the first step of that type of Mesiras Nefesh. But my mother was. I think if I look back at it now that we're in a similar seat, thinking about the amount of carpool and driving and schlepping that my mom did over the years with. I'm thinking about swimming here. I come here; it's hard for me not to mention. Give a shout out to the Schwartz family in Monsey. Mm-hmm. Just all the time carpool with the Schwartzes, Mendy and Benji Shalom, and
Benji Schwartz was your age.
My class. We were classmates.
Just for those who don't know, so Mendy is the co-publisher of the Jewish Link, and Benji Schwartz passed away, I think 20 or 30 years ago. I think over 30 years ago.
Yeah, so. It's coming close to 30. Mm-hmm. It's coming close to 30. Not exactly 30 yet, but it's he was my first friend. Him and Shlomo Trudler. I mean, these we kind of all came up together in Monsey, and yeah, I mean there was like a very I say rich. I don't mean it economically. There was a very rich subculture in Monsey of the centrist community. I don't think we called it the centrist community. We just called it Friends, Trevor back then. But between Rabbi Tendler's community and Rabbi Wine and Ashar, there was great football Shabbos afternoon, and just really, really good people. We davened in Rabbi Chaitovsky's shul, Rabbi Leibel Chaitovsky, Camp Regesh fame, who was was an extraordinary guy. He was the Rav of our shul as we got older and we moved to a different neighborhood in Monsey, and he was my Rebbe for lots of years. And just in general, we had a really lovely community. I think there was always the sense that my parents were a little bit on the outside of the HAC in Monsey because being Bali Tshuva, they didn't quite know all the right moves and all the right, sismot, phraseology and different nuances in the community. And I think that was probably a very, very positive contributing factor to us being normal and healthy. Is that like they didn't know how to fake it. And they didn't know like the stuff that they were supposed to fake with. My father would often point out, I guess we're on air. I'm not going to say the Rosh Tevis that he would use, but he would point out where things were just not authentic and things were not real and things were silly.
Things that bothered him, yeah.
Things that were superficial and like, what is that? Where does that come from? Where does it say that in the Torah? Type of things. And it was from that type of upbringing with really a very strong home and a very diverse type of community around us. Ironically, we got exposure to a lot of different types of Jews and a lot of different types of ways. We have family members who are married to Jews and family members who are not. Family members who are observant of and aware of Yiddishkeit in very different types of ways. And living in a community where there was a lot of, exposure to Torah and to Yiddishkeit around us. So we kind of had a really beautiful, it's a really beautiful glimpse into the different possibilities of living a Jewish life.
You probably didn't notice it as carefully as a young man, as you're growing up there.
No, you don't notice anything when you're a kid, but you don't remember all the times your mother read your bedtime story or your dad took you out and had a catch or, but that forms a collective subconscious and a parchment upon which we kind of sketch the story. And then you get older and you're like, wait, I'm doing that with my kid. Are they going to remember the Tuesday night that I put my phone away for 5 minutes and spent with them? Probably not. I'm probably not going to remember, at the Shabbos meal when, I didn't just stuff my face and go to take a nap, but like spent an extra 10 minutes listening to them and hearing their stories and telling about their ups and downs of the week. They won't remember every single week, just the same way I don't remember every single week. Or I don't know, I imagine most people listening don't remember every moment of every experience, but the collective general way or value system that comes across, and you only realize that when you get older.
I agree with you. No, that's a lot of hits the subconscious, and you only realize when you get older. I agree.
Hopefully, we can pay it forward.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep going forward a little bit. So let's go Frisch and YU, and let's try to. I mean, it's
unbelievable that people find this interesting about me. Like I always wonder to myself, like everybody wants to hear what I did in high school. I had a.
We actually only hear interesting things, by the way.
Yeah, but the interesting things you don't talk about on the air.
Okay, the interesting things that could be talked about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was very bad at math.
No, that wasn't what I was referring to.
I don't know if Mrs. Ironman is still in the world and you're there. I'm sorry. I don't know.
All right, so we can skip Frisch. Okay.
No, I had some amazing. My experience with Frisch was extraordinary. It was interesting. The Rabbeim and Ashar didn't wanted me not to go to Frisch at the time.
Sense.
Yeah, I mean half the kids in those days in Frisch didn't go to Israel for the year. It was different demographically. The whole community was different. TABC was different. There was no Mayanot. Kushner didn't exist. The SAR was SAR didn't have a high school, I don't think. The elementary school. So the whole community and the demographics were different. But, what Frisch is today, what it's become.
They're not getting kids from Monsey, I don't think. Very few.
They must be.
They're few.
Yeah, I don't know, but they're doing extraordinary. I mean, the most os chinuch today, talk about everybody in this community. That's something which is unbelievable. I mean, you have... I don't think I thought about it then, but the opportunities for people to choose between what's around this community, between Heichal Torah and TBC and Mayanot and Frisch and Nale and MTA, and probably a bad idea to start mentioning ones because you leave somebody out. But the world has shifted in such a way where the teachers are so great. I had great teachers in high school. I had some really great teachers. I had some stunkers, but I had some great teachers too. Enough that I have such warm and positive memories of specific individuals, and relationships I'm in touch with until this day. Rabbi Yitzchak Torsky, which I'm sure many of your readership and listenership are familiar with, was such a wonderful Rabbi. I certainly didn't appreciate him. I certainly didn't pay attention. I certainly didn't. But the makif, so to speak, the surrounding light of his presence, of his just midos and his soft-spokenness, made a very real impact. I can't tell you anything that we learned. And I told that to him also. He knows that. He read the Tanoim by our wedding. So, I was in touch with him. And recently, he put out a new Parish on Chumash. And we, had the privilege of being involved in putting out the Sfarim on Chumash and re-engaging some old classmates and friends to help, be a part of that. Him and Rabbi Aaron Goldscheider, who actually was just up in camp visiting a couple nights ago. He has a daughter working there. He's a publisher of Torah Tidbits in the OU. He was the one who actually encouraged me to start writing a weekly column. A Rebbe who believed in me in high school, who I didn't even have as a teacher. My locker was across from his class in 12th grade. So if anybody's listening who was out there in the back of their mind considering maybe to go into chinuch, I know that's not so popular nowadays, but you can sell StubHub tickets. You can sell tickets on the side. Or you can make an ancillary business and sell orthotics to dead people or something like that in the nursing home on the side. But that in our community, we have so many talented and bright people who are not considering lives in chinuch and education and Klei Kodesh. Such a tragedy. Because Rabbi Goldscheider wasn't even my Rebbe. I never had sat in a class with him. He was my close friends, a year older than me. Mo Kaplan and Jason Suss, who were a year older than me, were across the hall from where my locker was. And he used to come out and give me 15, 30 seconds of hak before and after class sometimes. We'd just shoot the breeze. And he was the one who guided me and encouraged me to choose to go to Shalvim, as opposed to other places I was considering. He said, go be a small fish in a big pond and push yourself. You'll like the passion, the intensity. And he was right. He was the one who, validated a lot of, behavior and would talk me down from the ledge of interactions with other members of the school and administration. Maybe there were clashes. And he was just a very young, cool, relatable guy. And we stayed in touch here and there over the years. And then many, many, many years later, after having not seen him or been in touch for well over a decade plus, gave me an opportunity to be a part of the OU, world of the Harbatzas Torah. The impact that some of those teachers had when I was in Frisch was really something great.
How long have you been writing a weekly column? 15 years? 10 years?
4 years.
Oh, I thought
this is my fifth cycle.
Oh, I thought
this is starting my fifth cycle, and that process of Rabbi Goldscheider, when he became the editor of Torah Tidbits, he reached out to me and said, "Would you write?" And I said, "I don't really write. But he said, "Well, maybe try it." And that, I'd had a draft of a table of contents for a book for a long time that I just sat there, a folder with notes and
full table of contents.
Yeah, table of contents.
Did you at least get a first chapter done?
Nah, it was like I had stories and varts and teachings, and based on what ultimately became the skeleton of the background for whole Baderach, but like ideas and stuff I'd say in Shirim. I was a Rebbe in Reshit for a lot of years, and save this idea and this vart and this thing, but never thought I'd. I don't know. Maybe one day I thought I'd. If I knew then what I knew now, I would have said maybe I'll make a Netflix series out of it or something like that, like make some money.
By the way, I have tremendous respect and awe for anyone who's able to write weekly. So I always like to ask. We haven't had too many of our weekly columnists on yet, but what's your secret? Meaning,
I appreciate that.
And also, how do you? I guess we're skipping a little bit of the history, but that's okay. We're jumping around. Like everyone I find has a different technique. Some people say, different technique for getting the writing done weekly. What's the Rabbi Judah Mischel technique?
Okay, first, I really appreciate that question. No one ever asked that question before. I still don't self-identify. You're allowed to identify however you like these days. I don't identify as a writer. I haven't yet. I'm still hedging bets about it. I'm still not totally comfortable in my skin about it. I just popped into Wine Rib next door, and I was by Tony earlier. You see your book sitting on the shelf there. It's like I get like a, and I thank God still getting feedback every week from people. I mean, literally, I put out 2 years ago. I'm still getting out every single week a message. So there's a pachad, there's a fear of writing because like the Kotzker said, not everything you think you say, and not everything you say, you write, and not everything you write you publish, and not everything you publish, you sell. Sometimes it's just pinimi. It's just for, internally. People put out cookbook for their family. People put out their essays for their family. And not everything you distribute and you put out there on the shelf for somebody to look at and say, hey, that's no good, or I disagree with that, or there's a typo here, or whatever it may be, or that's not a fair idea. So the process was a little bit of a very good friend, a mutual friend, Jason Suss, was one who really just pushed me over the edge to just say,
really, Jason,
bang it out.
Yeah,
it's like bang it out. Come on, you say. I spoke in his shul, and he said to me afterwards, like, you got to write this up. I said, it's a different brain. I write a little post-it note, 3-4 ideas, and you can get up and talk about it.
Total different experience.
It's a total different thing to be mitzamtzem, to bring it down, to draw it down, and put it into vessels, and find the right words. My mother's an English teacher. My mother was an English teacher for many years also.
This explains a lot, by the way.
And my dad worked in finance for most of his professional career as a manager. He also was somebody who writes. My father writes. He wrote reports. He would write reports, and there would be. I have like memories of like first of all, our house was filled with books. Memories of my father's notepads, of his presentations to the international conferences of bond buyers and global bond insurance summits, and making presentations in front of governors and mayors about rating their bonds and their bond insurance. And, always the Wall Street Journal, always New York Times, always the Bond Buyer, always Jerusalem Post International Edition, always Hadassah Magazine in the house. First column was Joe Lowen on Hebrew language. That would always be the first because he was a good friend of the family. Always Rosenthal first in the Times, we had a real Masorah in the house, floating off the center of the page, the columns there. And I was always much better in that side of the brain than the mathematics and science side of the brain, which I barely graduated high school with. And literally the SATs, I remember like meeting with Rabbi Krug, in Frisch, and with learning specialists saying like, how is it possible to be in one so strong in one area and the other area be, well, one I wasn't interested in, the other one is you can, shovel things around and exaggerate and use shmear around. It's more midrashic as opposed to the halachic side of the brain. So the writing really just became something that I was good at. When I was in YU, those blue test booklets.
Sure.
My favorite classes were Jewish history and English comp and philosophy, where you could smear it around. You don't have to be so exacting. I think I was always afraid of being precise and being clear. Even in learning Torah, I relate much more to associative learning, Chassidus, Medrash, Musar, as opposed to halachic and lumdus.
By the way, I want to tell you something. Just you haven't answered the question yet, but I everything you're saying makes sense. I see it in your writing. Keep going.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So the process of writing just became then, it's no secret. It's based around a story. It's based around narrative, as opposed to a diuk, as opposed to an insight in a pasuk, as opposed to something which is halachic or structural in a text, which I appreciate very, very much. Through my wife, I really gained a real appreciation for the lumdus, so to speak, of Torah and the analytical side of studying Torah. From in the Torah Shebechsav specifically, I'm talking about. But when I write, I try to write the way I speak. You want to invite someone in a comfortable way, and that often is with a story. And that's often with a story. Everybody likes a story.
You always start with a story.
Yeah, people like something to say at the table. People want to engage. You have such extraordinary columnists. It's a kavod to be in that same constellation, in the same paper included. I don't see myself like that. Like Rabbi Moshe Tarragon, I sit down with a highlighter to read a column. And Rabbi Rosner is one of the great rabbis and teachers of the generation of Torah Shebal Peh. He's one of the Bali Masora of our generation. I also write my own stuff, which takes longer because I don't. People have recommended. I know that there are plenty of columnists who speak into a thing and send it to somebody to transcribe. I want to work on this skill of being more precise. I find that boiling down ideas, condensing them, trying to say things not too schleppy and not beat around the bush, but to say it more directly, and find the right adjective to describe, to be mechabe, to respect the person who's the story is about, and then to have some type of meaningful takeaway that short and to the point. I found this helped me crystallize the things that are most important to me. I write about the same thing over and over and over and over again. It's a different story. It's a different vart. It's a different parsha. It's a different yontif. It's a different, personality who's at the center of it. But they usually end up being things that I'm thinking about or things that are important to me.
So give me the process, the physical process. You start on Sunday.
Well, for Baderech, it was writing it was a folder. It was actually a physical folder of papers and post-it notes. And then COVID was the opportunity to have some real quiet time where I wasn't traveling and didn't have the day-to-day rhythm. And I just got up early, 5 o'clock in the morning. Would go downstairs, do some exercise on the floor, some little breathing, a little bit of hisbodedus, have a coffee, write, and then daven, and then get the day going. And the writing was really about just connecting dots. In other words, the Rabbi Zusha, the Baderech had an outline already. It's based around the acronym of the word Teshuvah, Tav Shin Vav Beis Hey, and the 5 values that each of those letters represented an acronym. So it gave it already those are the 5 parts with an intro and an outro, and that's your table of contents. Then it's just kind of filling in the space with color and ideas and stuff that I wanted to kind of stick in and have it loosely connected if I wanted it in there. It was harder to chisel it out. I have an editor who became a very good friend, actually. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Matisyahu Brown. He was a wonderful and kind, brilliant person who lives in Pardes Chana. And we worked together on it. We had a shared Google Doc, and he would kind of chime in. And the way he said it is his primary work with me was pulling back on things, was saying less. So then from there, that's how the columns were born. I actually made it. I can get into the technicals. I made an Excel spreadsheet. I have an Excel spreadsheet, and I write out. It's each column on the Excel spreadsheet is another parsha. So it's Bereshis and then Noach and then Lech Lecha, and I've done that. I have it's very long spreadsheet now.
Yep.
You know, horizontally, and I have Bereshis with parentheses 1, Noach 1, and that's how I actually started Pesach time was when I wrote the first column. It was for Torah tidbits. This will be the 5th Pesach column, and it was like a story for the Seder, and then a little bit of a Vart, and then kind of kept that going. And I write down, you know, like a few words about the story, you know, Rav Soloveitchik, the song that he walked down to, or, you know, Lubavitch Rebbe, chocolate in his middle drawer, you know, dark chocolate in the middle drawer, whatever the story may be. And then underneath it, write the, you know, a line or two of, you know, Ramban on, you know, whatever it may be, or Baal Shem Tov, thing like that.
That's a long Excel sheet, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's 5 years long now.
Wow.
It's about 50 columns times now. It's about now 5.
50.
But it's but also, I'll be honest, I don't do them all in order. Meaning, if I hear a story that I'm thinking about, or something that a vart that I see or I hear, that's a beautiful idea on Truma or Tetzaveh, whatever time I'll put it in the Truma Tetzaveh column there. It's just a little note for myself to remember it. Often I will not remember it. I won't know what that means. You know, if it says Nechama Leibovich on Mishpatim, so then I can like go look up Nechama Leibovich Mishpatim. But it says that, you know, Killer Gra on Shir HaShirim.
You're not remembering
like,
that
3 months later, I'm like, Killer Gra on Shir HaShirim. Killer Gra, where was I when I wrote that, you know? So I've gotten better a little bit at like kind of assigning, you know, those ideas. I don't have a great memory. And it helps when I write things down. I put it into the modality, like Pirkei Avos writes, you know, Pirkei Avos says that one of the 48 ways to wisdom is saying it out loud and writing it down. So I write a lot of things down. My wife helps me a lot with that now. My professional responsibilities have grown in Camp HASC, and taken on more achrayus in Camp HASC.
I was going to ask, are you even able to work to write in the summer at all?
No.
It's only during the year when you don't.
No, I don't want to like blow it,
Okay.
but I handed in. I wrote my columns. I slow release them when I get the email from your editor saying like, hey, we need. But like I wrote them before Pesach.
Got it.
And that takes a certain focus and mishma'at, we call it, like a certain to get into the headspace of writing about Shabbos Chazon in Adar. Rabbi Weinreb, one of the wise men of the generation, one of the great Chachmei Hador. I have a great schus of having spent some real time with as a mentor. We had breakfast together many times. He said that breakfast was our destiny. That's what he said to me. I don't know. It just sounds awesome. I don't know.
I think I'm getting to get in the sense that he's one of the reasons why I like Rabbi Weinreb is he's also a psychiatrist. He was a
he's a professional. He's a real person. He's an erlich. Besides an erlich yid, he's a chassidish yid, meaning he's a warm, brilliant, and also the editor of the Steinsaltz Talmud. So Rabbi Weinreb once, you know, he in his introduction to his parish on Kinos, writes about what it was like to be, you know, focusing on Lamentations the entire year. You know, you're like Sukkot, he knows he has a deadline for his publisher. He's writing on Eicha. But just the ability for the Jewish heart and mind, for the human heart and mind to hold lots of different contradictory things. I found that writing actually helps focus those specific feelings and those specific things. I've come to really enjoy it. Like really, really enjoy the process of writing, and I'm so grateful that you give me the privilege to be in the link. I really mean it. It's like, you know, the written word. We're the people of the book. The written word is something, you know, that lasts. There's kiyum.
I want to say two things. First of all, number one, it's clear that despite all denials, you are a writer. Okay, meaning what I'm saying is that you resisted it. I get it. And by the way, maybe you keep thinking that way, but you are definitely a writer. And I want you to know, second is I really enjoy every few months when you send me an email saying I was in this community and 2 or 3 people said that they read you every. I mean, I'm just saying
it's
to
real.
me as the publisher of the Jewish Link, I get enjoyment and I enjoy those emails.
Yeah, it's not the New Jersey Jewish Link.
We're bigger than Jewish.
None of it's really. I mean, in the beginning, it was like, okay, you had this paper in this neighborhood, this paper in that neighborhood, but this gets everywhere, and people really see it. I imagine that's a lot of achrayas on your shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. We're today one of the largest publications, Orthodox publications in the tri-state area.
Yeah. I imagine that's a lot to carry around. Also, I don't want to ask you questions, but I imagine that's a lot of responsibility. I imagine, like, you know, what you advertise and what ideas and what ideals and what opinions you promote, you probably have a lot of sleepless nights over that.
Yeah, the answer is it's not as simple.
People
It's
make
not.
you crazy in the
By the way,
supermarket.
whose podcast is this?
I don't know, do people make you crazy in the supermarket?
The people make me crazy all the time.
I'm getting that also. I get that also these days.
The answer is just if it makes you feel a little bit better. I will say that I can walk into any place and I have to be ready at any time for anything. Literally, meaning it could be a letter to the editor that was published 4 months ago that's bothering someone. It could be something we published a year ago. But the truth is, I really don't want it to be only about me. We haven't done it about the Jewish. We've actually done a few Jewish link type pieces, but I have to be whenever I walk into a shul. Like first of all, just so you know, I look around. I think like, okay, who are the Mishugam? Who are the crazy people? And I don't mean crazy. Who are people like who have had issues in the past with the
Who
Jewish.
cut out a letter from the editor from 4 months ago and is waiting to find you and let you know what's what?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And then there's sometimes occasions where I wonder if you know how open I should be with that I am the publisher of the Jewish links. So in certain communities.
Yeah.
But
Also, there's something very powerful about that's also what we said as a bit writing. Is that's one of the things I think Rabbi Soloveitchik was very hesitant to write and publish, because not just because of his perfectionism and because of his, let's say, brisker background and all the, I'm not going to analyze this, be a psychologist for Gedolei Yisrael or for anybody, but when you write something and you put it out there on paper, there's something eternal to it. There's something, even in a newspaper, meaning, I grew up with, a home where there would be like newspaper,
sacrosanct probably.
But newspaper was like sitting on the table, open, with like a circle around the article to read it. Like, like Cholman Deboy, this is for everybody to know, like, this is what my dad would read. It's funny, I told this to him, Rabbi Jonathan Rosenblum, who's one of the really insightful people that we have in our community. Yale educated.
Mishpacha columnist,
But he was also an editor of the International edition of the Jerusalem Post back in the day. He had a columnist. Excuse me. Joel Rabibo was the editor.
Yeah.
Joel Rabibo was the editor. He actually later became the editor of Hamodia, and I got to met him a couple times in Beit El, in his home when he lived in Beit El. But Jonathan Rosenblum, who wrote some of the most impactful books that I've ever read in my entire life, introduced me to people who have not been physically alive in this world for generations, but who I live with and think of every single day, like Reb Shraga Feivel Mendelevich of blessed memory, and Rev Dessler, books that he wrote that people who were like, loom large in the back of my mind. So, my father used to bring the International edition of the Jerusalem Post to the table and read Jonas and Rosenblum columns out loud at the Shabbos table. Meaning, like, there's a Chedros Kodesh about writing something that someone might read. Now, somebody might read in the bathroom, consult your local, Orthodox rabbi if you're allowed to do that, but this is these ideas are ideas, and they also, people respond. I get feedback. We've gotten feedback from
for sure.
things. People are, approve or disapprove. Try not to write anything that's too objectionable. I don't bring personal politics or personal opinions into things for very obvious reasons. Yeah. Like there's no kvod shamayim. If the goal is kvod shamayim, then there's no, like Michael Jordan said when he was younger, when he started first making it.
Yeah, what'd he say?
His parents wanted him to endorse a certain candidate, an African American candidate from his, from his community, and like Jordan's endorsement at that point, he just signed with Nike and won a championship. Like he's making it big. His endorsement on his old school grounds would have really put this person into Congress, and it seemed like there's no reason not to, but he was like, "Nah, the Republicans buy sneakers too." Like I try very much to keep this down the middle. Even though Rav Steinsaltz would say from the Chassidim that horses just walk in the middle. Yeah. I want to, I try to not be objectionable and share a nice idea. And somehow people still find something to... So I've found that usually people who have like issues, the people who are going to come over to you at a kiddush when you're with your family, or someone who's going to come talk to you while you're out with your partner, with your husband or your wife or your partner, or someone who's going to come interrupt you during shul to hack you about something that you said or did or feel or believe. It's usually more their problem, more their issue that they haven't worked through, that like they can't stand not having the platform, or like you put yourself out in public, you open yourself up to public scrutiny and opinion.
Well, by the way, the point you just mentioned is very often we find that people who are if a certain issue riles them up, and it could be any issue. Often it's because, more often than not, it's often because there's a Yiddish word, a personal schnit. There's something
They're triggered.
There's a personal trigger, meaning that issue is personally close to them. So if someone's screaming at me for us publishing something, I've almost gotten to the point where I'm like, I know there are deeper levels here.
It's the 80-20 rule also, meaning like there are a handful of a few coins in a pushka make a lot of noise. You always have people who will like harp on certain things, and I found that a good night's sleep, a little cold exposure, a little cold plunge, a little Huberman podcast, and straighten things out with some hisbodas, coffee, and some time with my wife. Like everything, the body heals. Everything takes care of itself. I have a specifically hard time taking, I'm going to say criticism, but I'm thinking of another word, taking garbage from people and heat from people on things sometimes, and I do. Professionally and personally, it happens. Especially in camp, there's so many moving pieces in Camp HASC, and it's thank God, a very public place. And
I want to talk about camp. Personal HASC could be upset if we don't talk about it.
But then again, whatever, people's are people, people's is 100%. People's, and you just have to give people, judge people kindly and favorably, and God willing, everything kind of straightens itself out. Okay,
so where does HASC come in? This image of you as a writer, chinuch, Rebbe. By the talking about like going into chinuch, going to like, actually that's an issue for us.
Sure.
We're actually going to, one of the things I'd like to actually use my paper for is to kind of like change that mentality. I haven't really figured out how to do it, but I want you as an agenda item. I'm one of my jokes is I'm a retired rabbi.
Yeah, I saw the cloth on your in your office.
But I'm saying one of the jokes is to try to change that mentality. I always felt that one of the problems in modern Orthodoxy, among others, was that we need to look at the guys going to chinuch and they have to be put on a pedestal, really similar. I mean, it's almost like banker, doctor, lawyer, teacher should really, and I don't know how, because even the Haredi world, it's not 100%,
sure.
Which I never understood, by the way, if you think about it, but
people's is people's.
No, I'm just saying, even in the Haredi world, in the more, I guess, that you think that chinuch, Klei Kodesh would be seen more positively. I think what I'm saying is I think it's a shared problem. It seems
it's a real problem, but I say it's a human problem also, and I think this is a perfect way to mention Camp HASC, which is really the entirety of my professional experience now. I've been putting, our family is privileged to be in service at Camp HASC. It's a schus to have the opportunity to be there, to work with Shmuel Khan and with the board of directors and with the camp leadership. You mentioned Razel and Avi Pollack.
Remind me, you were a HASC counselor, correct?
I never worked in camp.
That's what I thought.
Nope, I never worked.
I knew that.
I'm still the Tzigga Kimmener. I'm the new guy in town still.
You never had that?
No, my entry to Camp HASC came when I was a Rebbe in Reshit, my in-laws' yeshiva that I was there for many, many years. The most wonderful experience being a Rebbe there. And I became the camp rabbi. And I was there really to provide, for the staff. And I'm going to say this, I
forgot that.
Barely knew the difference between Down syndrome and autism, and couldn't explain it to you clinically. And I said, what am I going to do there? It's not a place that I can make an impact. My impact was in Masorah Kollel. I was in Masorah, and I was in the same Masorah Kollel with Rabbi Michael Olshin, and with Rabbi Shalom Rosner and Ruvain Bashnak and Rabbi Chaim Marcus, my brother-in-law, Rabbi Rosner and Rabbi Meir Goldvich, and I was playing softball with the teens as the teen Rebbe, and everything was cool. It was easy and it was wonderful, and I loved it. And the Brazils were the best. And this opportunity came, and I don't think I understood what Camp HASC was. I know that my wife and my wife's brothers worked there and loved it. I had friends who had the experience, but I didn't totally understand.
You never had any direct experience with the special needs world?
No. Mm-hmm. I might have got schlepped on a date once to a Yachad Malav Malka or something like that, but that didn't go. Thank God that didn't go anywhere. But I didn't have no. But I did have a lot of experience with people with special needs, because everybody has special needs. When you start to understand that people are people, and you see a person as a soul, as a neshama and a guf, you start to understand that Ribono Shel Olam, God in His infinite wisdom, creates an infinite world with infinite types of people. Then if somebody has a genetic issue or a physical handicap or some type of physical disability, they're a person like you or I, and everybody has something, and everybody's in this world together, and we're meant to do this all together. And if I've become anything, or if I'm becoming a person who's growing closer to Hashem and doing good in the world, it's because of my wife and because of my professional experience in Camp HASC, meaning the exposure to just the absolute goodness, the best of the human condition, giving, unconditional love. I mean, the support, the professionalism, the Mesiras Nefesh, just the incredible soul glow that you experience in that place. It's affected me by osmosis, and I drank the Kool-Aid, and now I have the schus of also mixing it and serving it.
Wait, so how many years do you serve as camp
This
rabbi?
is my 8. I was the camp rabbi for I think about 10 years, 8 years maybe. I don't remember exactly. It's all
transition to executive being. Is there a camp rabbi now? I forget.
Rabbi Yehuda Willig.
Well, okay,
Rabbi
so
Yehuda Willig is our Mor D'Asra.
but he didn't. When you switched over, like they didn't. Was there always a camp rabbi?
I was the shadchan. I think I hired him.
Okay.
I introduced the idea of, I don't want to say I hired him. I introduced the idea of him joining. His wife was a therapist. Rabbi Willig was elsewhere. I mean, HASC is a place which has gone through a lot of changes, a lot of gilgulim over the years. The current iteration in the last decade, being its own independent, nonprofit, having a camp board, which are very active and very involved. Now, as part of the HASC Center constellation, we've had the same professional leadership for this, for more than a decade now, and this board has really, led us. Shmuel Connor, camp director, myself, Shmuel's team at HASC Center. We've really become a very stable and forward-looking organization, running in the black, growing, building 3 beautiful new bunk facilities in the last year, with a brand new medical facility that's going to change the face of the way we provide care, God willing, in this coming summer. Just unprecedented levels of growth, improvement of processes and systems and services. And, our goal is to be more relevant during the year for families and to provide more support and Shabbatot and events and programming. But I see what it does with the staff. I see how it does for the staff. And I don't see it as independent from other facets of my identity. Meaning, if I'm able to write and cultivate ideas in Torah that resonate, a lot of that has to do with the fact that, my professional life, even if it's spent on spreadsheets and Excel and, development and budgeting and government funding and managing staff and dealing with people and, making sure that that there's the right amount of burgers ordered for the staff barbecue and that the sound guy is coming for Eitan Katza, it's all in the service of others, so that there's a siyata d'shmaya that you have when you just dedicate yourself to other people. I want to make that just to close that circle on the mention, which you mentioned it as a side point, but I really think it's the main thing, which is a life of service is a life of service. Chinuch, Rabbanos, a person's going to be a Mora, a person's going to work in education. We're meant to be helpers. Baruch shenasan olam l'shomrim. Hashem put us in this world to fix the world and to hold it stable and to improve the world. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. And if we are people who believe that what's left of us when we leave this world after 120 or more likely, significantly less than that, what's left of us is the good deeds that we do and the tzedakah we've given and the chesed that we've done and the Torah that we've learned and the positive impact we've made, then what ought to drive our value system and conversation is, how do we get more of that in our life? How do we get more joy and more yichud with our loved ones? How do we cultivate a more whole environment with our partners, our husbands, our wives, our children, our friends, our neighbors, our community? How do we build inside out? And then that value system is not just about distraction, and it's not just about stuff, and it's not just about accumulation, but it's about giving and about being connected with others. It's not so much about me, but it's about you. It's about Hashem ultimately. So a life of teaching and avodas Hashem or rabbanos or outreach or inreach or whatever it may be. Even if someone is living in the professional world, you see the world more expansively, you see the world in a bigger way, then we see ourselves in service. And I think that if we change our language a little bit and our focus on what's awesome and what we praise and what we see, kfi mahalalo, I believe that our families, our kids will naturally gravitate toward lives and professional lives and personal lives that reflect those values of service, of giving, of sharing, of doing for others. That's so important in my professional life in Camp HASC, and it's so much a part of why I love being there.
Actually, I want to tell you something. As a former counselor, and a parent. I really have the unique perspective. They're not that many people like me and my wife, I should say. Meaning, I was a HASC counselor. I also there's a bit of machlokas of the story. I also sort of met my wife in HASC, even though we didn't start going out there. I also have the perspective of seeing it as a parent as well. There are a few of us out there, not that many. Just want to say the following. So you're saying that has changed you. I agree with you. I think definitely, I think actually the fact that you're seeing it not as a counselor, I think has affected you in a way. You may not appreciate it, but I think the fact that you weren't a counselor, you were the outside of the new guy, camp rabbi, definitely changed the way you came to it.
I wasn't emotionally invested when I came. I had no nostalgia there. Nothing meant anything to me. It was nice, beautiful, good people, beautiful. I saw it with beginner's mind, without even realizing that term at the time. My wife, Ora, is crazy about HASC. I mean, she was the driving force who was always talking. I mean, when I was in Camp Masora, I took lifeguarding lessons with Laz by the lake. Because she said, maybe then you can be a lifeguard in HASC, and I could be she could be a special ed teacher. My wife is a special ed teacher. I never imagined that I'd be this deeply vested in it, but it has a magnetic pull because it's just good. It's just good. Kids who come work there realize how good they are. People remember their time in Camp HASC and remember just how pure it was and how selfless and how good. And like Rabbi Yaakov Bender says, like if we could bottle that, if we could only bottle that achrayus, that responsibility of one person taking for another, and that love, and the world would just be a much better place. But I agree with you. I came in thinking, without any strings attached, without the relationships to the individuals who were there before, during, or after. There's definitely a little bit of an outsider feel, and I joke about it in camp, especially. I joke about it with your sister. I joke about it with Rabavi and with Shlomis Palak. I joke about it, but it's. I think that it's been a benefit. In other words, to come with a little bit of an outsider perspective.
I'm going to agree with you on that one. Let's see. I'm just trying to think. Let's try to bring it back to the Jewish link, and I guess we'll begin to wrap up a little bit. So the summer, what's changed in the last for you? What's been just one big change? I see a lot of changes over camp, but what for you? You have a different perspective than me as a parent. What's been the big change in Camp HASC? And remember, this part of the concept behind what we're doing is that that's relevant to our readers, to our listeners. What's changed? What's different at Camp HASC when you started, 10 plus years ago, or more or longer? I have my own ideas, but I'd like to hear what Judah you have. What's been the big change among the guys, among the campers?
So I want to say, like, camp has always been a very special place. It's a place that always people love and feel that they've grown and changed the lives of others. I think that we're connecting a lot of the dots now. In other words, there's always been different parallel streams where the staff had an experience, the campers have an experience, the campers' families have experiences. The administration has their thing, then the organization has its own life also, and there's like that piece of it. What I hope aspirationally is that we've created more of a unified sense of yichud in all of it. In other words, that there is less difference between. You don't mean yichud, not seclusion. You mean
not
seclusion in terms of a man or a woman in a way which would be only. But I mean yichud. I mean in terms of a unified sense of Hashem Echad, is that there's really one thing taking place here, and that the goal here is Kfod Shamayim. The goal here is to show up as our best selves. To create an environment where there's professional systems, where the parents feel good, where the campers are getting their maximized experience, where there's respite, where there's medical and therapy and academics and all of that, and that the staff also feel appreciated and feel good about it. And then that translates into our pillar society. Meaning, talk about the link, listing names of hundreds of people in our community, alumni, friends, and neighbors who just say, I want a piece of this, and take a piece of it. Because there's an openness and a oneness in it, a unified movement in it. I believe that we've transcended being just a 7-week or 8-week respite program, where it's good for the families who are in Camp HASC. But this is really something which has become almost like a lighthouse of values and ideas. And I don't want to get too big on britches and overestimate our impact, but there's something about Camp HASC that just touches people so deeply in the world, which is beyond reason. It's almost beyond proportion, because it affects the deepest places called Nishmas Yisrael, the soul of the Jewish people, and that's that's where God is unified in the world most, when people take care of each other, when Jews are together. And that goes across boundaries. That's not like, that's not New Square versus Five Towns. That's not Williamsburg or Teaneck. That's everywhere. That's oneness. There's really one love there. And I feel that I'm feeling it, and I'm hearing it, and I'm experiencing it from not just the people who are working in camp who are enjoying it, but we're opening our doors wide to the world, and I think making a bigger impact with Kiddush Hashem. And the link is part of that. You amplifying the message and being someone who feels it personally and is experiencing it personally from your specific and very unique perspective. I think maybe there's a handful of people in Jewish history who have that type of perspective nowadays. Yeah, the Penners, the Oregons, people who met in camp, were in service in camp, grew up there, and then children worked in camp and are. There's very few. There's not even 500,000 of people, but somehow these universally relevant ideas of a values-driven summer of service and of care, and a language of positivity and inclusion and openness and chizuk, and growth is something which is resonating not just with our staff and families, but not just with our alumni, and not just with our supporters, but people enjoy reading an article or seeing pictures because there's joy and there's positivity, and you feel good being a part of that, and that's meaningful. And that's real. So if I've seen anything that's continuously growing, and I believe Mirza Hashem will continue to grow, Ad Biaskoa will be just this magnified, amplified, let's call it Pirsume Nisa, sharing the light and sharing the positivity and the chesed and the goodness and the best of our community, are the young people who are working in Camp HASC. There is absolutely no more impactful experience, and I believe this with every fiber. And we work a lot at this, and we invest a lot in this. I don't know of another place where a person can invest themselves and their resources where you have an ROI like this in Klal Yisrael, in terms of responsibility, growth, self-esteem, positive sense of self, being non-judgmental, how that will translate into the way people treat and respect others who are different than them, not just people with what's called specialized needs or autism, but everyone that you meet on the street with a different level of observance or a different tfisa ulamit, someone across the aisle from you, a blue state, a red state. Camp HASC is just thoroughly purple. I mean, it's thoroughly open and embracing, and allows, or at least aspirationally allows everyone to be themselves and respect themselves and others. The ROI on investing in such a program, investing your kids' summer or your money or your time or your platform, I believe the return on that investment is a tremendous Kiddush Hashem, and something which is maybe unparalleled in our generation, and it's a big schus to be a part of it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
That's my pitch.
I like the pitch. It happens to be as a parent. I'll just say that I forced my children. I told them they have to work at HASC. I don't require. I said you got to do at least one summer or even a half.
Better
summer.
Than working in cobalt mines.
Exactly. I said that you have to do one summer at camp, and I even had a child who wasn't even so excited about going, but he went.
He did great.
And I have one more son who also probably follow in that path. But no, I agree with everything you're saying. I appreciate also the Jewish Link connection. We feel we work with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of good nonprofits, schools. We feel it's very hard to sometimes always feel that way. I always like to say that we're their partners. HASC certainly, we feel that with you.
It is. It's true.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true. You can have a beautiful menorah that's lit, but if you don't have a good table for the menorah to stand on, you don't have a window that's clean for it to project its light out onto, or a newspaper to put that picture in, or a good Instagram account, so to speak, for that to be projected into the world, so then you don't fulfill the mitzvah of Pirsume Nisa, of sharing that miracle. And I don't know, if I could, of a layman, if I could bless you as a friend and as a reader, you should be blessed to use this wonderful publication as a platform to magnify the best of the Jewish people and the best of the world, and people should be inspired and feel good about it.
Amen.
Thank you.
I don't think we've ever ended with a bracha before, but I'll take it.
Got to turn it into tefillah, so thank you.
Thanks for being with us on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. If you would like to participate or be in touch with us in any way, please email us at editor@jewishlink.news. And follow us and find our podcast wherever you find podcasts.